Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to welcome you back to this second and final plenary session of the EPP Zagreb Congress. Today is an exciting day. We will vote on our resolution on climate action and elect our EPP Secretary General, Treasurer and Presidency. The voting area has already opened and will close at 11:45 sharp. Today, we will hear from HDZ Secretary General and Speaker of the Croatian Parliament, from many of our EPP leaders, heads of state and government, and once again, from our newly elected EPP President. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Secretary General of the Croatian Democratic Union, the party co-hosting the Zagreb Congress, and the Speaker of the Croatian Parliament, Gordan Jandroković.
Dragi prijatelji, dame i gospodo, na početku želim vam još jednom u ime svih članica i članova Hrvatske demokratske zajednice dobrodošlicu u Zagrebu i Hrvatskoj. Nadam se da vam je lijepo i da se ugodno osjećate s nama. Održavanje našeg kongresa u Zagrebu potvrda je snage i ugleda, te privrženosti Hrvatske demokratske zajednice europskim vrijednostima, ali uvjeren sam i Europske pučke stranke hrvatskom narodu. Želim čestitati gospodinu Donaldu Tusku na izboru za novog predsjednika Europske pučke stranke, najveće i najsnažnije europske stranke. Uvjeren sam da će predsjednik Tusk svojim bogatim iskustvom suvereno voditi našu političku obitelj u daljnjoj izgradnji europskog projekta. Ujedno zahvaljujem Josefu Dolu, istinskom prijatelju svih nas, na njegovom požrtvovnom, strastvenom i uspješnom vođenju Europske pučke stranke tijekom proteklog razdoblja. Također, čestitam predsjedniku Bundestaga, gospodinu Wolfgangu Schäubleu, na nagradi za zasluge tijekom njegove duge, bogate i iznimne karijere, njegovom neumornom zalaganju za Europu i odanost prema našoj političkoj obitelji. Dragi stranački prijatelji, kada sam malo prije rekao da je Europska pučka stranka najsnažnija europska stranka, nisam pod tim mislio samo na brojnost naših članova. Mislio sam na njezinu povijesnu ulogu koju je imala u izgradnji Europe, na njezinu viziju, misiju i rezultate koje postiže. Ali prije svega, na vrijednosti i načela na kojima se temelji naše djelovanje, a koji su nam ostavili u trajno nasljeđe naši osnivači. Na tim vrijednostima moramo stalno raditi, podsjećati i čuvati ih. To su one vrijednosti kršćanske demokracije koje vučemo iz naše kršćansko-židovske duhovne baštine. Poštovanje svakog čovjeka s njegovim neotuđivim dostojanstvom, sloboda, demokracija, jednakost, poštovanje temeljnih ljudskih prava, obiteljskih vrijednosti, pravednosti i solidarnosti. Hrvatska demokratska zajednica, koja je od samog osnutka bila stožerna stranka u hrvatskom političkom životu, prepoznala je te vrijednosti kao svoje. Vođena tim vrijednostima ostvarila je najvažnije ciljeve za hrvatski narod: neovisnost, slobodu, mir, demokraciju, tržišno gospodarstvo, članstvo u NATO-u i Europskoj uniji. Zato je za nas neupitno zalaganje za Europu koja počiva na tim vrijednostima. Kao i na načelima suradnje, dijaloga i zajedništva, koje crpi snagu iz bogatstva naše različitosti. Jedino zajedničkim djelovanjem na tim vrijednostima i načelima možemo imati Europu kakvu želimo, ujedinjenu, snažnu i demokratsku. Tako ćemo također pokazati našu odgovornost za njezinu budućnost. To je posebno važno u trenutku kada pokušavamo pronaći vjerodostojne odgovore na sve izazove današnjeg složenog svijeta. Sigurnosne ugroze, terorizam, migrantska kriza, klimatske promjene i posebno bih istaknuo populizam, lijevi i desni ekstremizam, političku demagogiju. Nositelji takvih politika temelje svoje ideje na manipulacijama, neistinama i najnižim strastima. Pritom se koriste modernim komunikacijskim sredstvima i obraćaju se velikom broju ljudi. Na taj način žele potkopati naše vrijednosti, identitet, vjerodostojnost i istinu. No zajedno smo do sada učinili puno toga kako bismo ih zaštitili i većina građana je to prepoznala. To pokazuju i rezultati zadnjih europskih izbora, gdje je ponovo Europska pučka stranka najsnažnija stranka u Europskom parlamentu. Međutim, poučeni dosadašnjim iskustvima, moramo još više slušati poruke građana, predlagati nove politike, te tako osnaživati njihovo povjerenje u demokratske institucije na nacionalnoj i europskoj razini. Pritom moramo etički djelovati, braneći uvijek slobodnu razmjenu ideja i argumenata. Budite uvjereni da će Hrvatska demokratska zajednica biti u tome u potpunosti angažirana i da će Hrvatska tijekom predsjedanja još snažnije će se zalagati za snažnu Europu u svijetu punom izazova. A rasprave i usvojene rezolucije na Kongresu pokazuju da se naša Europska pučka stranka zaista brine o jednoj Europi i našem planetu. Za kraj, dopustite mi čestitati svim našim članovima koje ćemo danas izabrati. Uvjeren sam da će rezultati izbora biti najbolja moguća odluka za nas, ali i za Europu na početku idućeg desetljeća. Želim svima uspješan nastavak rada na Kongresu Europske pučke stranke. Hvala vam.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to introduce a leader since 1993 of the Slovenian Democratic Party and two-time former Prime Minister of Slovenia. Please welcome Janez Janša.
Good morning, everybody. I see it was a very short night, but let's start. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues, dear Mr. President Donald, well, we gather today in a special time for the European Union. During the last decade, the European Union has changed. Financial crisis, migratory crisis, and Brexit have created something much different than the EU we knew after the fall of the Berlin Wall and big enlargement. Huge optimism and strong conviction that European Union, now whole and free, will become a world champion able to shape globalization, was replaced with overwhelming feeling of uncertainty and also skepticism. Some old divisions surfaced again, and new ones appeared. Despite all, optimism and hope exist, and vast majority of European population still believe that the European Union, wisely managed, is more of a solution than a problem. This hope is crucial because the biggest challenges in decades, maybe in the entire history of the European Union, are ahead of us. Demography is our most important strategic challenge. Digital Europe is our key to growth and jobs tomorrow. Preserving the creation and protecting our European way of life is precondition for everything else. If we fail, after a while, socialists will have nothing to promote. A new Commission President included all these strategic challenges into her program for the next 5 years, which is also a source of optimism. And I congratulate her for this courage. But our task is to collect enough political power behind the program, behind her program, to be implemented fully and on time. This new era demands new answers, new policies, and a strong leadership. Unfortunately, after the last EU elections, the European Union Parliament is more fragmented and not more focused or united. And this is not the worst part of the problem. If we want a strong and effective European Union, we also need a strong and stable member states. Currently, almost half of the governments in our member states have minority or technical governments. Some of them are even composed of coalition of losers of national elections. Grand coalitions are collapsing in some countries, new political forces surfaced, and new reality cannot be managed by old concepts and obsolete political tools. This is why I wish to our new President, Donald, wisdom and a lot of political and personal courage. There is not only one, there are 27 battlefields to fill and as many battles to win. This means that we have to respect historical differences and at the same time avoid using double standards. Some of us were born in welfare and some in dictatorships. The fall of the Berlin Wall 40 years ago was not the end, but the beginning of the democratic transition for the vast part of Europe. The west part of Europe has to help us to finish it and not vice versa. This is especially important when we treat new EU applicant countries from our eastern neighborhood and from Western Balkans. There are tasks which are difficult, demanding, and time-wasting. And there are tasks which could be easily implemented if there is enough political will. Let's start with them. Let's keep our promises and start negotiations with Northern Macedonia. Bulgaria, Romania, and Croatia have all fulfilled criteria for Schengen area. Let them in, and security in the entire European Union will improve. At the end, I want to thank Joseph Daul, especially for his support 5 years ago when national elections in Slovenia were stolen and when he was one of the only few EU politicians not prepared to use double standards. At the end, I also thank our host party, Croatian HDZ, for your warm hospitality. Puno hvala. And I wish a very successful first Croatian EU presidency, to Croatian government, to Prime Minister Andrej Plenković. Good luck, Sretno Andrej, sretno Hrvatska.
I want my world to be green and strong, like this tree. And I want it to stay that way for my children and for my children's children. But how can I be sure? Polar ice is melting and our oceans are filling with plastic. Extreme weather is making life more and more difficult for animals and people. And I'm not the only one who is worried. What must we do? We must keep up international agreements and keep developing solutions in power generation, in industry, and for the way we live. We need to be more sustainable in how we travel, heat our homes, and grow our food. We must stop letting waste pollute our planet and use it instead as a resource. It's up to us all, individually and together. But what are the next steps? Who needs to do what and when? Can it be done best across the world, across the whole of Europe, in my region, in my town, or by me and my family?
It is my pleasure to announce today's debate on action to address climate change. Here to tell us more is our moderator, EPP Deputy Secretary General Christian Kramer.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates, I'm very happy to welcome you to our panel on climate action, and I'm even more happy to welcome to the stage our distinguished speakers, which make this panel a high-level panel. The Prime Minister of Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the Taoiseach of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, the Member of the European Parliament, Jessica Polfjärd, Professor Stefan Rahmstorff from Potsdam University, and last but not least, Fran Posteniak, CEO of Abo Smart Technologies. Welcome to all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is a reality that concerns us all, and it is an immediate threat to life as we know it. For already 2 decades, the EPP has been driving the EU climate change agenda. However, faced with the alarming scientific evidence, the citizens are demanding more. Some people, also in our political family, think that we should leave the climate change issue to the Greens. I think this is wrong, because, first of all, a large majority of our citizens see the urgency and demand action. Second, we are the political family that needs to bring solutions that are not ideological battles, but that really deliver results by using all available technologies that are low carbon or carbon free. I'm very happy now to announce as the first speaker in our panel, Professor Stefan Rahmstorff. Stefan Rahmstorff is a German climatologist and oceanographer. Since 2000, he has been a professor of physics of the oceans at Potsdam University. He received his PhD in Oceanography from Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. His work focuses on the role of ocean currents in climate change. He was one of the lead authors of the United Nations IPCC Fourth Assessment Report, and the Financial Times ranked him among the top 10 climate scientists in the world. The blog he co-founded, and which I have to admit I also consult very regularly, realclimate.org, is from my point of view one of the best websites to follow the latest developments in climate science. So in order to start off with a presentation on the recent findings of science, Stefan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for this very friendly introduction, and good morning, everyone. Let me start by saying that I'm a great fan and proud citizen of the European Union, not least because of its leadership on the climate issue for many years. And we all know, of course, that not everybody likes the results of science, and some people turn to alternative facts instead. So let me thank you that you invite me here as a scientist, and that you are willing to listen to science, because science is not partisan, it is not tribal. There is no green or blue physics and left or right science. Science applies the same consistent standards of evidence and logic to everything, no matter whether we like the results or don't like the results. And the method of science is simply the most successful way to get as close to the truth as we possibly can as humans. So what is the science telling us? Let me start by a famous curve, the Keeling curve, that shows how the carbon dioxide concentration in our atmosphere has increased. That measurement series was started in 1959. You can see the seasonal cycle there. It's the breathing in of the biosphere, mainly the northern forests, of CO2 in the seasons, and you see this exponential increase, which is entirely caused by human activities. There's no doubt about this. And you can also compare it now with the help of the ice cores in Antarctica, with the entire Holocene, the last 10,000 years. That's what we see here. And we have increased the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere by about 45% since. Actually, we can go back even longer with the ice cores, about 1 million years, with other methods even much further, and we know that the carbon dioxide levels are now higher than any time in the past 3 million years of Earth history. Now on the top right you see a number there that says 2 watts per square meter of Earth's surface, so that is a heating rate caused by this increase in carbon dioxide, a gas that traps heat, which has been known since the 19th century and is continually measured, by the way, by a World Radiation Monitoring Network, by the World Meteorological Organization. And this heating rate of 2 watts per square meter is the reason why our planet is getting warmer and warmer. That's elementary physics, the first law of thermodynamics, energy conservation. If it gets hotter, the energy has to come from somewhere, and it can only come through what we call the radiation balance of our planet, a fact first understood in the early 19th century, by the way, by Fourier. And today we really understand this radiation balance and its changes. We measure them, so we know that it's the increase in greenhouse gases, mainly CO2, causing the warming. This is what the warming looks like. This is every stripe shows 1 year since 1880. I can add the actual more conventional view of these data to it. And you see that the Earth temperature has increased by about 1.1 degrees since the late 19th century. This warming actually has been predicted before it was observed. The first official expert panel for the President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965 warned about the upcoming global warming due to our burning of fossil fuels and predicted the sea level rise and all these things that have since happened. And it was only 23 years later, in 1988, when the US climate scientist Jim Hansen famously stated in front of a Senate hearing in the United States that the long predicted global warming is now here. It can be observed. I was doing my PhD in New Zealand at this time, and I remember this very well because in the 80s, it still caused controversial discussions amongst climate scientists. The more conservative professors said, maybe Jim Hansen is a bit far out on a limb, that he already says this now. But since then, with the ongoing global warming, there is no more doubts about the fact that we are observing exactly what has been predicted already since the 1960s. And by the way, not just by university climate scientists, but also by the scientists of Exxon, which is now, as you know, facing a legal battle over misleading the public on the facts that it actually knew. This is from the latest United States National Climate Assessment, and it's a concise summary of how the radiation balance of our planet has changed. And you can see that the human-caused changes are by far dominant. They dwarf the natural changes to the radiation balance. And these have not only been very small, but in fact slightly negative. So if anything, natural climate factors have slightly counteracted the global warming that we have been causing. We can now put this into a longer-term climate history context. Here you see the last 20,000 years, and that is a fruit of decades of paleoclimate research with ice cores, with sediment cores from all the world oceans. We have enough data now to form a meaningful global average temperature. And you see 20,000 years ago was the height of the last ice age. We warmed from that to the Holocene by about 4 degrees, and then since the mid-Holocene 5,000 years ago, we have seen this very slow cooling trend, which would have continued. These are caused by the Earth orbital cycles, the so-called Milankovitch cycles, and we understand these now. We can reproduce them in our climate models, and this slow cooling would have continued if we had not been around the curve, and within 100 years, we have outdone more than 5,000 years of cooling there. And we are really catapulting ourselves out of the Holocene, which is the entire experience of the history of human civilization. We're moving into uncharted territories, and we are feeling the effects already. This is the map of the warming since the beginning of the 20th century, and you can see almost the entire globe has warmed, with one exception, the cooling in the subpolar North Atlantic, south of Greenland and Iceland. This has been predicted by climate models. It's a result of a slowdown of the Gulf Stream system in the northern Atlantic. Now, what we feel, of course, as humans is not the average annual temperature. We do feel the extremes much earlier, and we're already suffering from a lot of a massive increase, about a 5-fold increase in the number of record-breaking heat extremes in Europe. Example, 2003, we had 70,000 fatalities across Europe. And the hottest summers in Europe since the year 1500 have been 2018, 2010, 2003, 2016, and 2002. It's obvious that this is not some random statistics, but this is a systematic effect of global warming. We're also suffering from increasing drought. I've been telling this for at least 15 years, that the models predict increasing drought problems in the Mediterranean region, and these are happening. This is observational data that show the decline in rainfall. And note that, for example, Syria has been strongly affected by this. It has actually gone through the worst drought in its history, and according to sediment data, the worst in at least 900 years. In the years before the outbreak of the protests there, and you all know what happened after that. And many people, serious scientific studies, link that to the massive drought problems, 1.5 million interior refugees in Syria, and so on. On the opposite side, we have increased extreme rainfall. There's also simple physics behind that. A warm atmosphere can hold more moisture. I just remind you of the flooding 2013 across Europe. 7 countries had massive public massive flooding problems. 2014 here, we had massive flooding of the Sava River. We've actually published a case study on that a few years ago. And this data curve shows that the amount of record-breaking rainfall events is indeed increasing worldwide as predicted. Let me mention a final point about the impacts of this warming, and that is sea level rise. That's been expected since the 1960s, as I mentioned, and it is indeed happening. Sea level has increased already by 20 centimeters globally. And here you see two future scenarios. The blue one is a Paris Agreement scenario. So we keep warming below 2 degrees, well below 2 degrees. Sea level will continue to rise because the oceans and the ice sheets respond very slowly with a time lag. So all we can achieve now by stopping global warming is to stop a further acceleration of the sea level rise, as it would happen in this business as usual scenario, the red one. And the latest IPCC special report on the oceans and the ice sheets has concluded that if we fulfill the Paris Agreement, we can limit global sea level rise in the next 300 years to 1 meter. If we don't, if we continue business as usual, we have already 4 meters of global sea level rise by the year 2300, and we will have abandoned a lot of big coastal cities by then and lost entire island nations. So what can we do? Thankfully, we have the Paris Agreement. This is a historic agreement, really unprecedented in the history of mankind, and all countries, including countries like Saudi Arabia, who live off selling oil, have agreed to this because everyone who has ever looked closely at the evidence is aware that we are facing a disaster of planetary scale if we do not stop global warming. So let me just show my last diagram, which is probably the most important for you here. We have a limited budget of emissions if we want to stop global warming at a certain temperature level. This is a very fundamental fact that everyone needs to understand. It's because of the very long lifetime of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We're filling the atmosphere with CO2 like you would fill a bathtub with water. The longer we keep the tap open, the higher the level will rise. And if we want to stop the level at a certain line, we can only emit a certain total cumulative amount of CO2. Now, what does it mean for Europe? Here you see the historic emissions until last year and what budget we would still be able to spend if we want to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, that's the green amount there, or to well below 2 degrees with a 67% probability. There are always probabilities to cover the uncertainties in this. And with the assumption, of course, the Paris Agreement doesn't stipulate how much of the remaining emissions budget Europe can use for it and how much goes to other nations. Europe, by the way, is the third largest emitter worldwide behind China and the United States. The Paris Agreement just stipulates this principle of a common but differentiated responsibility, which is usually understood that industrial nations actually have a greater responsibility because they have contributed much more to the problem in the past. Now, these curves give Europe a share of the global emissions budget that is proportional to its population, its share of the world population. That not everybody would agree that that is fair. I'm sure India or China would have a different opinion because of these excessive emissions in the past, but it's just an illustrative example here. Now, note one last point. It is important if you look at these lines, this is just assuming we reduce linearly. If we do it more slowly at first so that the curves kind of bend round, then we will have to be at zero emissions earlier because it's the total amount that counts and not the year when we are at zero. Now, if we reduce in the beginning faster, we gain time at the end, we can have a longer tail of some remaining emissions. That is also an important concept of the budget. So let me conclude by saying that global warming is unequivocal, it is ongoing, we're in the middle of it, it's not some future projection, and the impacts are not subtle anymore. We are feeling them already around the world in form of weather disasters and so on. Now, to stop global warming well below 2 degrees, as everyone agreed in Paris, is a race against the time now because of decades of debating and not doing very much. And until now, there are only very few governments that are on track. We need to do more, and I think that is what we want to discuss on this panel. And so I thank you very much for listening to me, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Rahmstorff, for updating on us about the scientific situation. Now I have the pleasure to go to the government side that you mentioned in the end of your presentation. And I'm very happy that we have Prime Minister of Greece, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, here with us. Prime Minister Mitsotakis is the president, as you know, of Nea Demokratia, who led his party to a victory in the last Greek general election and secured the seats to form a majority government in July this year. Shortly after taking office, he pledged in the UN General Assembly to adopt an ambitious national policy for energy